Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM Today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Thursday, 1st May 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. China faces a dynamic landscape encompassing economic adjustments, political maneuvering, and technological innovation. The nation's lead in 5G and 6G technologies has sparked concerns in the United States regarding competitive positioning, particularly concerning Huawei. In an effort to improve international relations amidst trade uncertainties, China has lifted sanctions on UMAPs, a move widely interpreted as a charm offensive. However, trade relations with the U.S. remain tense, as China has retaliated against record-high U.S. tariffs. The Trump administration's new regulations now subject Chinese goods worth up to $800 imported through postal services to tariffs and increased documentation. While President Trump has expressed optimism about reaching a trade deal with China, a U.S. envoy reports that no formal talks are currently in progress, with Beijing reportedly awaiting clarity on the prevailing tariff policy advisor within the divided White House before recommencing negotiations. These U.S. tariffs are beginning to impact China's cargo shipments, although some analysts suggest that Beijing could still achieve its 5% GDP target. Domestically, China is actively addressing internal challenges and advancing technological development. Wang Jianyuan, a vice chairman at China's securities regulatory body and a key figure in Chenex's 2020 surge, is currently under investigation for corruption, causing unease within the financial sector. Wang Shaoan, formerly a prominent trade negotiator for China, has been reassigned to a less prestigious role, possibly signaling a decline in his career trajectory amid the Trump tariff dispute. A newly enacted private sector law aims to resolve persistent issues concerning cross-regional enforcement. In the technology arena, there is growing caution against over-reliance on AI due to potential cybersecurity vulnerabilities, with calls for a robust security mechanism to monitor and intercept threats amid the DeepSeek craze. Alibaba's Q13 AI model family is contributing to narrowing the technological gap between China and the U.S. smart materials scientist. Lai Yongxi was recruited from the U.S. to become an associate professor at Nanjing University's Suzhou campus, and chemist Charles Lieber, formerly of Harvard, has joined Tsinghua University to pursue scientific advancement. China is also encountering challenges in its aviation sector. The country's C919 jet faces possible delays in obtaining certification in Europe, with estimates suggesting the process could take 3 to 6 years. The European regulator's assessment that approval for the C919 could extend over this period has dampened hopes that China's jet would pass inspection by 2025. China is closely monitoring the divided White House and the delayed EU endorsement of its 919 jet. An intensified tax evasion probe in China involves AstraZeneca, a British-Swedish pharmaceutical giant, and concerns over $1.60 million in import taxes. BlackRock-backed Suez is reviewing its China assets with the assistance of HSBC, potentially valuing the China water business at over $1 billion business over $1 billion. United States. The United States is navigating a complex trade relationship with China, characterized by ongoing tariffs and fluctuating negotiations. President Trump has suggested that tariffs could potentially lead to fewer toys for American children, but maintains that China would suffer more in a trade war. The Trump administration's trade strategy is centered on targeted deals, with no China talks currently scheduled, according to the U.S. Trade Representative. A new regulation now subjects Chinese goods worth up to $800 imported through the Postal Service to tariffs and increased paperwork. David Perdue, nominated by Trump and labeled anti-China by a Beijing think tank, has been confirmed as the U.S. ambassador to Beijing. The US is also grappling with concerns about its technological competitiveness, particularly in relation to China's leadership in 5G and 6G technologies and the rise of companies like Huawei. Indonesia. Shifting focus to Indonesia. West Java Governor Deddy Mulyadi has proposed implementing China-style boot camps in the city of Depok to address the growing issue of youth crime. Europe. Turning to Europe, its relationship with China is multifaceted, marked by both collaboration and challenges. The EU's endorsement of China's C919 jet is facing delays, with certification potentially taking 3 to 6 years. To improve relations amidst trade uncertainties, China lifted sanctions on EU apps in what is seen as a charm offensive. Japan is navigating a complex landscape of economic, security, and international relations concerns. The country has revised its growth forecast downward, citing the impact of U.S. imposed tariffs and opting to postpone further interest rate hikes. Japanese lawmakers are worried that these tariffs not only strain economic ties, but also threaten national security amidst China's growing influence. There's a rising sentiment within Japan to lessen dependence on the U.S., particularly given uncertainties surrounding former President Trump's policies and calls for embracing the Global South. A recent poll shows declining faith in the U.S. due to perceived erratic behavior. Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba is actively working to strengthen regional influence through trade and security partnerships, including visits to Vietnam and the Philippines, where he met with Philippine Coast Guard Commandant Admiral Ronnie Gilgavin in Manila to discuss issues of mutual interest. Domestically, Japan is facing challenges, such as a recent study indicating that 1 in 12 Japanese experience loneliness at work, believed to be worsened by long working hours affecting mental health and family life. Logistical problems faced by wholesalers mean that only a small fraction, 1.4%, of government stockpiled rice reaches retailers. In terms of technological advancement, Dentsu aims to expand the reach of its tuna scope AI technology, which is used for tuna grading, to other countries involved in the tuna fishing industry. The repatriation of Ainu remains from the University of Edinburgh in Scotland to the Ainu Association of Hokkaido marks a significant cultural event. Incidents causing concern include the arrest of a man in Osaka who allegedly drove his car into 7 school children, all of whom were hospitalized. The Shinkansen bullet train line between Tokyo and Osaka was temporarily stopped when a snake caused a power outage. The arrest of a U.S. Marine in Okinawa for allegedly raping a woman and injuring another on a U.S. military base has also caused controversy. Concerns have been raised about fake Japanese police uniforms, reportedly from China, potentially facilitating real-life crime. Turning to the United States, the U.S. is in tariff talks with Japan, specifically about electric vehicle charging formats. The U.S. has expressed concerns about Japan's subsidies favoring the CHAdeMO charging standard over foreign designs, such as those used by Tesla. In sports, Japan's Kawasaki Frontale defeated Cristiano Ronaldo's Al Nassr 3-2 in the Asian Champions League Elite semifinals, and later beat Al Nassr to reach the Asian Champions League final. Finally, according to the Asian Zodiac's 60-year cycle, 2026 will be the year of the fire horse, Hinoma. Ukraine and the United States have cemented a minerals agreement, opening Ukraine's mineral resources to Washington. The White House is celebrating the accord as a landmark achievement, underscoring President Trump's dedication to a lasting peace. Although the agreement's specifics are not yet public, there's a sense of cautious optimism in Kyiv. The Kremlin has stated that a swift resolution to the war with Ukraine is improbable. Deadly air attacks have occurred in Odessa, causing widespread fires. Turning to the United Kingdom, Foreign Secretary David Lammy has revealed ongoing conversations with France and Saudi Arabia about the possible recognition of a Palestinian state at a conference in June. The UK is also experiencing an unprecedentedly warm start to May, prompting wildfire alerts. Temperatures are projected to reach 30 degrees Celsius, a record for this early in the year. Counter-terror police are investigating comments made by the Irish rap group Kneecap. Parts of England are holding local elections, where Farage's Reform UK party is seeking to make substantial gains. In research news, a UK university is investigating a potential correlation between the menstrual cycle and knee injuries. India is facing heightened tensions with Pakistan following a deadly attack in Kashmir, which specifically targeted Hindus, according to survivors. The attack sparked anger within India, raising concerns about potential repercussions for the Muslim community. India has vowed to bring the perpetrators of the Pahalgam attack to justice. The Indian Supreme Court has further extended Jagta Singh Yohal's imprisonment by deferring his bail case, prompting UK MPs to appeal to David Lammy for intervention. On the economic front, President Trump alluded to possible trade agreements with India, emphasizing that the US is not pressed due to the benefits it is reaping from tariffs. Moreover, India may acquire Boeing aircraft that China has declined. Domestically, investigations are ongoing after a snake was discovered in school lunches, causing illness in 100 children. The U.S. is becoming a less attractive destination for Indian students, who are being deterred by visa challenges and safety concerns. Pakistan is under increased pressure from Gulf nations and the EU to de-escalate the escalating tensions with India following the Kashmir attack. The historical backdrop of armed conflicts between India and Pakistan is being scrutinized as both countries manage this latest crisis. Despite official data, a concealed $10 billion trade relationship exists between India and Pakistan. Pakistan is grappling with heightened tensions with India after a terrorist attack in Jammu and Kashmir, leading to airspace restrictions over Karachi and Lahore. Mohammed Azim Malik, the ISI chief, has been appointed as National Security Advisor, marking the first time as serving. ISI chief has simultaneously held both positions. In northwest Pakistan, 3 security personnel died in a raid on a militant hideout. More than 1,000 religious schools in Pakistan-administered Kashmir have been closed, and walled bunkers are being constructed due to fears of potential attacks. The country is also deporting thousands of Afghan refugees, even those with Pakistani spouses and long-term residency permits, resulting in family separations. India's trade negotiations with the U.S. and its ongoing relationship with Pakistan could potentially complicate China's influence in the global south, according to analysts. In a separate incident, the Instagram account of Pakistani javelin thrower Arshad Nadeem was blocked in India following a legal request. Syria is grappling with escalating internal conflict as sectarian clashes intensify around Damascus, especially in Jaramana. Druze militias are heavily involved, with dozens reported dead. Feeling abandoned by state protection, residents are forming self-defense groups after 7 men were killed in Jaramana. Amidst the spreading violence, the Syrian government reported Israeli airstrikes. Speaking on the future of the nation, Kurdish leader Salih Muslim Mohammed expressed a desire to avoid a new centralized regime in Syria. He also addressed Turkey's influence, the re-emergence of ISIS, and the ties between Syrian Kurds and Israel. Australia is gearing up for a general election focused on the rising cost of living, the economy, energy policy, and relations with China, where polls suggest a Labour Party victory amid unease over Donald Trump's possible return. The Labour Party and the coalition are facing criticism for their apparent alignment on fossil fuel policy, despite Australia's record thermal coal exports of 57 million tonnes between October and December. The coalition has pledged to cut 10%, $33.20 million, from Creative Australia's budget, planning to reallocate these funds to the Melbourne Jewish Arts Quarter and unspecified broadcasting programs, if successful in the election. Turning to New South Wales, the coroner's court has made public CCTV footage of the Bondi Junction stabbing incident from April 13, 2024. The footage shows Joel Kochi, armed with a 30cm knife, approaching Inspector Amy Scott, who subsequently shot him dead after he had stabbed 16 people. Separately, investigative journalist Nick McKenzie admitted to employing deceptive tactics in the public interest during Ben Robert Smith's defamation case appeal. He also acknowledged communicating with Robert Smith's former wife, Emma Roberts, and her friend Danielle Scott. Israel has declared a national emergency due to intense wildfires near Jerusalem, prompting widespread evacuations. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's declaration comes as fires spread along the Jerusalem-Tel Aviv highway, raising fears they could reach Jerusalem. Several nations are providing firefighting aircraft to help combat the blazes. Simultaneously, Israel launched strikes in Syria, targeting a group it alleges attacked the Druze minority. The United States supports Israel's prohibition of the UN's Palestinian Aid Agency at the World Court. Mohsen Matawi, a Columbia student and Palestinian activist arrested for protesting Israel's war, was released, highlighting concerns about a crackdown on campus activism. Matawi sent a defiant message to U.S. President Trump. These events unfold as Israel marks 18 months of war amidst conflicted sentiments. A 2-month aid blockade on Gaza has also severely impacted Palestinians, particularly children. Ukraine is seeing increased calls from civil society leaders for the unconditional release of Ukrainian civilians held by Russia. Alexandra Matvichuk from the Center for Civil Liberties emphasizes the need to prioritize civilian prisoners in peace negotiations. A Ukrainian journalist endured torture while captive in Russia. Separately, an attack in Russian-controlled Ukrainian territory resulted in 7 deaths, according to Moscow-backed sources. Turning to Russia, the nation has commenced building its first road connection with North Korea, featuring a bridge across a shared border river. This project seeks to strengthen ties, particularly concerning North Korea's supply of ammunition and potentially troops for Russia's war in Ukraine. Russia's foreign minister is also working to improve economic and trade relations with the Dominican Republic during an official visit. In North Korea, a military modernization is underway, while the nation deepens its engagement with Russia. Key to this relationship is the new road link and bridge, facilitating the flow of ammunition and potentially troops to support Russia's efforts in Ukraine. Finally, in the context of China and Taiwan, polls suggest that most mainland Chinese citizens do not favor using military force to achieve unification with Taiwan. North America faces potential environmental upheaval, with a study revealing that a Cascadia Fault earthquake could trigger land subsidence and heighten sea levels from Northern California into Canada. Simultaneously, a severe storm swept across the northeastern United States and Canada, leaving thousands without power and causing widespread wind damage. Turning to United States-Canada relations, escalating tensions stem from tariffs imposed by President Trump. Despite prior efforts to limit his tariff powers, the U.S. Senate rejected a resolution to block Trump's global tariffs, a move that has stirred economic unrest. This action has faced strong opposition in Canada. The Liberal Party leader, Mark Carney, has pledged to confront Trump's threats to Canada's economy and sovereignty. In a move towards potential resolution, President Trump announced that Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney is slated to visit the U.S. in the coming week, opening the door for discussions on the contentious trade disputes. El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele engaged with the Trump administration regarding the detention of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was wrongly deported and imprisoned. This interaction occurred despite a U.S. Supreme Court order to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release. President Bukele also sought assurances from the Trump administration that Venezuelans deported to El Salvador's most feared prison were confirmed members of the Tren de Aragua gang. The case of Abrego Garcia and the broader issue of men disappearing into El Salvadorian prisons have ignited debate in the U.S., especially after President Trump's policy of deporting migrants to these prisons. Australia is grappling with alleged election-related violence in New South Wales. Police are investigating several incidents, including the smearing of feces on a truck displaying a Liberal Party advertisement. Authorities are also looking into arson threats and reports of attempts to intimidate diaspora communities. These intimidation attempts allegedly referenced historical figures linked to crimes against humanity in Afghanistan. Shifting to South Korea, the political landscape is seeing significant changes. Acting President Han Duck-soo has resigned, a move widely interpreted as preparation for a presidential campaign. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court overturned a not guilty verdict for Lee Jae-myung, a decision with the potential to derail his own presidential ambitions. The legal challenge could significantly hamper his political momentum. Vietnam observed the 50th anniversary of its reunification on April 30th, recalling the end of the Vietnam War with the fall of Saigon in 1975. The anniversary arrives as the U.S. reconsiders its aid and promotion of democratic ideals in the region. As part of the observances, a commemorative quiz was held, while Chinese PLA soldiers participated in Vietnam's Fall of Saigon parade for the first time. United States officials invoked a wartime law to accelerate immigrant deportations, aiming to deport migrants to El Salvador. Tinian is experiencing renewed strategic importance as a U.S. defense location, echoing its World War II function. Trade between the U.S. and China has slowed, reflecting the impact of increased tariffs, according to a recent manufacturing report. India's presence at the Osaka Expo will highlight its progress in space exploration and information technology. Shifting focus to Hong Kong, community advocates are pushing to dismantle negative stereotypes associated with South Asian gangsters and Southeast Asian domestic helpers, instead promoting the celebration of the city's diverse cultural fabric. The Asian American Foundation has released poll data indicating that 25% of non-Asian Americans perceive Chinese Americans as a potential threat, underscoring the persistent challenges of prejudice and misrepresentation. Thailand saw prosecutors drop a royal insult charge against a U.S. academic arrested last month under lèse-majesté laws. Separately, widespread public anger followed a taxi driver in Phuket filming himself obstructing an ambulance, allegedly causing a patient's death, raising concerns about emergency vehicle obstruction. Turning to China, President Xi Jinping visited the Shanghai Foundation Model Innovation Center on Tuesday, highlighting the nation's growing capabilities in artificial intelligence. Sweden is grappling with the aftermath of a triple homicide at an Uppsala hair salon, where a 16-year-old has been apprehended. Investigators are exploring potential links to gang activity as they work to determine the motive behind the shooting, which claimed the lives of 3 young individuals. New Zealand declared a state of emergency nationwide as severe weather battered both the North and South Islands. Wellington faced its strongest winds in over a decade. Heavy rains triggered a state of emergency on the South Island, with severe weather warnings issued across the entire country. Shifting focus to international relations, New Zealand's Deputy Prime Minister Winston Peters is scheduled to meet with French Minister for Overseas Manuel Valls in New Caledonia. This meeting likely aims to strengthen diplomatic ties and discuss matters of mutual interest between New Zealand and France, particularly concerning the Pacific region. Malaysia grapples with escalating food costs, impacting everyday meals like nasi lemak and beef rendang, as food inflation outpaces general inflation and wage increases. The Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission, MAC, aims to bolster its capabilities to reclaim billions in unlawfully obtained money, seeking the power to do so without needing to press charges. Adding to the nation's challenges, a financially burdened Malaysian man plotted the arson of his mother's residence and the abduction of her grandchild, hoping to force her to pay off his debts to loan sharks. South Africa is seeing President Cyril Ramaphosa launching an inquiry into potential interference by past African National Congress, ANC, governments. The inquiry will focus on the investigation and prosecution of crimes from the apartheid era. This follows a legal challenge from 25 relatives and survivors of apartheid victims. They allege high-level government obstruction of investigations referred by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, TRC. The inquiry seeks to uncover the extent and nature of this interference and its impact on justice for these historical crimes. Brazil is currently embroiled in a controversy surrounding a potential new red jersey for the national football team. The Brazilian Football Confederation, CBF, is considering the introduction of this jersey before the 2026 World Cup. However, the proposal has ignited fierce opposition, particularly among right-wing Brazilians, who view the color red as an anti-patriotic symbol, undermining the traditional yellow and green colors associated with the nation. Philippines is grappling with the aftermath of a tragic bus accident, where a speeding passenger bus collided with several vehicles at a highway toll booth, resulting in the deaths of 10 people, including children. Meanwhile, the nation's diplomatic front is facing challenges as Beijing summoned Philippine Ambassador Jaime Florcruz. China voiced strong opposition to the Philippines' dealings with Taiwan. Analysts suggest Beijing interprets these interactions as implicit endorsement of Taiwanese sovereignty. In Hungary, a spirited assembly of 500 dachshunds and their devoted owners convened in Budapest City Park. They aimed to clinch a new Hungarian record. The event succeeded in this national endeavor. However, it fell short of eclipsing the Guinness World Record for the largest single-breed dog walk. Israel is battling intense wildfires near Jerusalem, forcing widespread evacuations. The Israeli government has requested international aid to combat the blazes. Assistance is expected from Italy, Croatia, Greece, Cyprus, and Bulgaria. Shifting focus to Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced new measures to support Ukraine. The Canadian government will provide additional financial and military aid. These commitments aim to bolster Ukraine's defense capabilities amid ongoing conflict. Meanwhile, in Australia, debates continue regarding proposed changes to environmental regulations. The government is facing pressure from both industry and conservation groups. The proposed legislation seeks to balance economic development with environmental protection. Turning to France, President Emmanuel Macron is addressing concerns about rising inflation. The French government is implementing measures to ease the financial burden on households. These include energy subsidies and price controls on essential goods. Kenya is facing scrutiny after a BBC documentary accused security forces of killing protesters. Adding to the unrest, Member of Parliament Charles Ongondo was shot dead in Nairobi. Investigations are ongoing. The United States has sanctioned 7 entities across the UAE, Turkey, and Iran for facilitating Iranian petroleum and petrochemical sales. Shifting to the United Arab Emirates, 2 companies based there are accused of helping to move these sanctioned goods. In Turkey, 3 companies face similar penalties for their alleged roles in the illicit trade. Meanwhile, in Iran, 2 entities are directly targeted as producers and facilitators of these petroleum and petrochemical products. These sanctions aim to further restrict Iran's ability to generate revenue through its energy sector. Qatar is seeing renewed diplomatic efforts to mediate between Hamas and Israel, aiming to de-escalate tensions and secure a ceasefire. These efforts are complicated by the ongoing political instability in the region. Turning to Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced new investments in artificial intelligence research. The funding aims to boost Canada's position as a global AI leader and create high-skilled jobs. The move comes as Canada seeks to diversify its economy. In France, President Emmanuel Macron is facing increasing pressure over pension reforms. Protests and strikes continue across the country, with unions demanding the withdrawal of controversial legislation. Macron insists the reforms are essential for the long-term financial stability of the nation. Meanwhile, in Germany, the government is grappling with a surge in energy prices. The situation is fueled by the ongoing conflict in Ukraine and disruptions to natural gas supplies. Chancellor Olaf Scholz is seeking alternative energy sources and implementing measures to cushion the impact on consumers. Shifting focus to Brazil, President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva is pushing for stronger environmental protections in the Amazon rainforest. New policies aim to combat deforestation and promote sustainable development. Lula is seeking international cooperation to achieve these goals. In the United Kingdom, the Bank of England raised interest rates again to combat persistent inflation. The move is intended to cool down the economy, but it also risks pushing the country into recession. The UK is navigating a complex economic landscape. Moving to Australia, the government is considering new regulations on social media platforms. The proposed laws aim to protect children from online harm and hold tech companies accountable for harmful content. The debate over online safety is intensifying. In Japan, Prime Minister Fumio Kishida is facing scrutiny over his government's handling of the rising cost of living. Inflation is impacting households and businesses, prompting calls for additional economic stimulus measures. Kishida is under pressure to deliver tangible results. Finally, in South Africa, the ruling African National Congress is preparing for upcoming elections. The party is facing challenges due to high unemployment and corruption allegations. The political landscape is becoming increasingly competitive. France is witnessing Cardinal Jean-Marc Aveline of Marseille emerge as a possible contender for the papacy. He is noted for his commitment to interfaith dialogue. Somalia has officially prohibited individuals holding Taiwanese passports from entering the country. This decision directly responds to the deepening ties between Taiwan and Somaliland. Somaliland, a self-declared independent state, is internationally recognized as part of Somalia. The increasing cooperation between Taiwan and Somaliland has strained relations, prompting Somalia's travel restrictions. United States Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem confirmed that Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the Salvadorian man mistakenly deported from Maryland, would be immediately deported again if he returned to the U.S. This reiterates the White House's firm stance on immigration enforcement. In Africa, U.S. aid cuts are causing the suspension of HIV cure research trials, impacting the efforts of African researchers. Simultaneously, many African Catholics are expressing a desire for a black pope, although they remain skeptical about its feasibility. Shifting to Asia, Cambodia sees BIDE initiating the construction of a 32 million electric vehicle plant, reflecting a strategy of localized production in its global expansion. Cuba is seeking assistance from China to revive its struggling tourism sector, which has seen a decline in visitors from Russia, Canada, Spain, and Italy. Bangladesh is the focus of a documentary examining the challenges to democracy and the potential fall of Sheikh Hasina's government. Singapore's political parties are embroiled in debates about the cost of living, the goods and services tax, and the balance between diverse parliamentary representation and giving the Prime Minister a stronger mandate. Moving to Europe, TikTok is establishing a €1 billion data center in Finland, drawn by the Nordic climate, which offers lower energy costs for data center operations. Serbia witnessed thousands commemorating the 6-month anniversary of a train station accident that resulted in 16 fatalities and triggered widespread protests. Switzerland is preparing to host the 69th annual Eurovision Song Contest in Basel. Turning to the Middle East, the Beirut Marathon was successfully held, despite previous disruptions resulting from Israeli military attacks. In North America, scientists are hopeful about the potential recovery of Mexico's endangered axolotl population, which has seen a drastic 99.5% decline due to pollution. The U.S. is actively seeking additional migration agreements, with reported discussions involving Rwanda, according to U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Car, steel, and aluminum tariffs introduced by President Trump are creating uncertainty for Volkswagen and Mercedes-Benz. Across the Pacific, Tonga is experiencing mounting concern over Sabbath observance laws, which significantly restrict activities on Sundays. Vanuatu's parliament adjourned due to a lack of quorum. The United Nations reports alarming conditions for civilians trapped in and around El Fasher in Sudan, with the UN rights chief stating that the situation there knows no bounds. The Rapid Support Forces, RSF, has warned of further bloodshed. Lastly, in Burkina Faso, thousands gathered to demonstrate support for the military junta, following an alleged coup attempt and criticism of junta leader Ibrahim Traoré by an American official. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.